GLD ePortfolio Leadership Implementation. After you've established what problem your leadership section will focus on and how the solution will address the problem, now it's time to consider exactly how you would envision making this happen. Hypothetically, of course, we are not actually asking or expecting that you enact this implementation plan that you set out. The implementation plan is typically laid out in a step-by-step manner, with details explaining how each step would be accomplished. And implementation plans can be written in paragraph or bullet point format, provided that the bullet points contain enough information and details that explain your thought process. In the last rubric item, item 12, it addresses the leadership implementation plan. The score of 3 states that you must develop a reasonable and clear plan for future implementation and that you address the issue consistent with other elements. This means that your implementation plan should be reasonably achievable for you personally. This is what the reasonable language is referring to in the rubric. Sometimes students have great ideas about how other experts, teams of people, or entire institutions even can improve or do things better. But this is not what the rubric is asking for. The implementation plan that you outline should include in every single step ideas and ways that you personally could work towards achieving that solution. And if you are suddenly feeling like you can't accomplish the solution that you recommended in the previous section, this is a great opportunity to consider why. Most often when this happens, the focus of the solution is too large and then needs to be narrowed down to create a more reasonable and attainable plan for implementation. This video will help walk you through each of the pieces that need to be considered when developing a solid implementation plan. What questions should an implementation plan answer? There are many things to consider when developing a plan for implementation, and there are a variety of ways to approach this part of your ePortfolio. This video will explore a series of questions for you to consider answering in your leadership section, some of which will probably feel more relevant to you than others. But if you have details of your own that make sense to include as well, please feel free to add those additional details that make sense for your particular project. The first question to consider is, who are your stakeholders? This is asking, who are all of the possible people that you can come up with that would possibly be involved in this part of the problem? Consider how they can be involved in your implementation plan and how you would incorporate them differently. Consider first the people impacted by your problem. Who are they? How are they impacted, and how can you involve them in your implementation plan? Next, consider the people who may be invested in this problem in some way. This population might not be directly impacted by the problem, but they might find it valuable to be involved. Finally, consider the decision makers. Who are the people of influence or those in power that you may need permission from or whose buy-in would be really important for this part of your plan? What timeline makes the most sense for your given project, and how will you ensure that you stay on track? It's best to consider how you'll address this problem within the next 6 to 18 months. So, given that limited timeline, how would you consider structuring your time to make the most of it? What preparation needs to occur? Do you need to prepare anything? Gather volunteers? Recruit? Create marketing plans? Materials? These are all things that you can consider including in your implementation plan as important details. Where will this plan take place physically or geographically, and what helped you make that decision? Consider what geographical constraints you may be operating under. For example, if you're planning to implement this in a big city with lots of resources, you may not need to consider the same things as if you were in a rural place with more limited resources. Alternatively, if your plan involves hosting a workshop, a club, or a training, consider how you would find a space to host those things in, and what makes the most sense considering your audience. Finally, consider whether volunteer help is needed or whether involving an expert would be necessary. If so, how would you find these people and how would you approach enlisting their assistance? In other words, how would you convince others to help you? For example, if you feel that a marketing campaign is necessary to the success of your implementation plan, but you don't possess this skill, then this would be an opportunity to consider who might be willing to help you. And then consider your current connections and resources, especially those at USC, if that's applicable. If you're considering involving experts, it's important to keep in mind how you would involve them. It's highly unlikely that cold calling an expert in any given field would be enticing enough for them to consider donating 50 hours to a volunteer project on a whim. But if there's a way for them to be involved that makes sense given your project, that would be an important detail for you to include.